Seems like we're getting ahead of ourselves because we know that we need to create a post with a category ID field. Okay, so in this video right here, what we're going to be doing is actually doing the create, read, update, and delete of categories right here very fast. Okay, so we're already used to this and it shouldn't be a hard task. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a create new category link right there. So we'll head over to our app.blade.php right there, and we need to duplicate this, and this is gonna be create new category. Okay, so our application is gonna be able to have multiple categories and we'll be able to classify our post under them. Okay, so I'll just say redirect to the route category dot create. Okay, so obviously we do not have that route, so let's create it. So in our web.php, we'll create a new route, and since we want it to be authenticated, we'll drop it right in here. So this is gonna be a get request, and it's gonna go to the slash category slash create, and right here would receive an array, and it's gonna use, why don't we create a categories controller, and would make sure that we also generate the resource, so we have those helpful methods. And this is going to go to the create route, because this simply is going to take us to the page where we'll be able to see a form that helps us create a new category. Okay, so as category.create, the name we gave in our view. Okay, so looks like we need a new controller. Let's generate one. PHP artisan make controller, categories controller. Okay, that category controller has been created for us right there. So we have a categories controller, and I should delete this and actually run it with our option. Okay, so right here we'll have a resource option. So we have many helper methods that are generated for us. Okay, so let's check that again, and there are our methods. So we have our create method already, and we're just gonna return a view where we create categories. Okay, so how do we set up this view? In our admin, we're gonna have a new folder, and we're gonna call this categories. Notice how we are putting each in a particular folder. This is really good for code organization. So right there we need to create a category. So we'll say create.blade.php, and I'll just copy this data from here, from the post, and I'll paste it right here. Okay, so looks like we need to create a new category, and our form is also gonna have this, but we're not gonna need the enc type because we're not uploading any images, and we're not gonna need all of this. We're just gonna need a name field, so we'll leave that one right there, and that looks great. So this is gonna be name and name, and this is gonna be name right there. Okay, so looks like we need a submit button. So we'll say form group, and this is gonna be a button success, and let's just precise the type to be a submit button, and right here is just gonna say store category. Okay, so this is gonna be storing the category into our database, and right here it's gonna submit to a category.store method, which we haven't created yet. Let's go ahead and do that. So that is gonna be a post. So we'll create a route, and this is gonna be a post route, and it's gonna go to slash category slash store, and we'll receive an array, and this is gonna be a uses the categories controller again, but this time around it's gonna use the store method, and it's gonna be called what we called it in the view, categories.store. Okay, so we don't yet have the method, or we have it but it's empty, so let's go ahead and populate it. So when we submit the data, we need to validate the data, okay, using the validator that we learned in the last video. So first of all, the validate is gonna take in the request, which we already have here, and it's gonna receive an array of rows, but in this case we have just one field, which is the name, and we're gonna say make sure it's required, and that's all. Okay, so right here we're just gonna die dump the request and everything. So if the validator passes, let's just die dump that for now. Okay, so now that we have that set, let's go ahead and visit our view. So I'll refresh right here. Unexpected this, it means I made an error in my web.php. Okay, so that's the semicolon. Okay, so I'll refresh again and everything looks great. So create a new category. The response content must be a string. Okay, obviously that's because in my categories I didn't precise what view. Okay, so let's see what view we're returning. So we are returning the admin folder, the categories directory, and the create view right there. Okay, so I'll refresh that, and category.store not defined, obviously, because right here it's not supposed to be categories, it's supposed to be category. Nice. Okay, so I really hope as we're going through multiple errors, you're seeing where we can have probable errors in our application and how I diagnose these errors really fast. Okay, so I just want my button to be centralized, so I will just put that in a div.text center, and that should centralize it pretty well, and it does. Okay, so right here I type in the name and I submit, it validates and it passes. Okay, so we need to create new categories. So let's head over to our categories controller, and do you remember how to create categories? We're gonna use the model that is in charge of the categories table. Okay, so we'll say use the app category model, and using this model we can create new categories. Okay, so how are we gonna do this? We'll just say a new category is equal to new category, and we'll just say category name field is supposed to be equal to the request and the name field that we got, and the next thing we just gotta do is persist that to our database by calling the save method. Okay, so we just return a redirect to the user back. Okay, so let's see if that works. So we'll go back, we'll refresh, and we'll put in a new category. Let's just say WordPress articles, and I'll store and base table or view not found block.categories. Do you know why we're receiving this error? Of course, we didn't migrate to our database when we created our categories and our post table. Okay, so I really hope you're learning from this. So base table or view not found, obviously, if that table is not in the database, it means you didn't migrate. So let's go ahead and migrate. PHP artisan migrate. So that's migrated. And if I refresh again, that should be created and redirect us back. So here we are. Let's create another category, and I'll call it Laravel articles. So store, we're redirected back. Let's create another one. I'll say CSS3 in depth. I'll store that category, and there we have 3 categories. Okay, so how do we see these categories? Now, let's go ahead to our categories directory, and there we're just gonna create a new file for us to see all our categories. So I'll just call this index.blade.php. Okay, now that's our view. How do we set this up? So I'll just say extend our layout. So I'll say layout.app, and we'll have a section which is content, obviously, and I'll just go ahead and stop there. Okay, so we need to display all our categories to the user. How are we gonna do this? Let's go ahead and use a table. Why not? So it's a table hover. Okay, and this table is gonna have a head, and this head is gonna have some table head titles. Okay, and the first one here can just be the category name right here, and we'll just save this one for editing the category, and another for deleting the category. So remember the delete and edit buttons we had for our to-dos list. Right here we just have an editing and a deleting button. Okay, so let's set up our body. Okay, so obviously we want to loop through a table row so that for each category in our database it's gonna have its own row, but right now we don't yet have that data in this view. meaning we need to first of all set up the route. Okay, so let's set that route up. I'll just duplicate this because it's a get, and right here I'll not say category, I'll just say categories for all, and you'll go to the index method and I'll just call this categories. Okay, so looks like we need to go to our categories controller, and in our index method we're gonna make it return the view we just created. So we'll say return view admin dot, right here we have admin categories dot index, and we need to pass in some data because remember we are trying to view all our categories. So we'll say store it in a categories variable, and would use the category model to get all the records. Okay, remember our with method. Here we give the name of the variable that we want to use to access that data in our view, and right here we pass in the data, and in this case the data is all the categories from our database. Okay, so let's go to our view, and here we should be able to access that data. Okay, so we need a for each loop. So for each categories as category, and for each, what we're gonna have here is a table row. Okay, so in this table row we're gonna have table data, and right here we'll just echo category name. So everything here should work perfectly, but let's create a link so that we can see all our categories. Okay, so we need a new link, so we'll add one. So this link is gonna be called categories, and right here it's gonna go to the categories route, which is the name we gave it in our web.php file. Okay, so right here this is the name. So that should work normally. Let's refresh, and if we click on categories, it says extend. Obviously that's an error. It's supposed to say extends. So let me go ahead and fix that. So it's supposed to be extends right here. Sorry about that, guys. Refresh. Layout.app not found. Obviously it's supposed to be layouts.app. Okay, so let's refresh again, and there we have it finally. So we have a table, and that table has the list of all the 3 categories that we created. Okay, so but this just looks a little bit dumb, so I'm just gonna wrap the table in a panel. Okay, so I'll just say div.panel default, and I'll just use the panel body right here. Okay, so the table would be inside a panel, and that should look better, and I'll refresh that, and of course it does. So that's a list of our categories. The next thing would be able to edit a category and delete a category.